Everyone knows the melting clocks. Posters, mugs, the wall of somebody's student flat. At some point it stopped being a painting and became a logo for the 20th century. And nearly everyone who knows it believes two things that aren't true. That it's a big painting, and that it's about Einstein. It's about cheese. I'll come back to that. The painting is called The Persistence of Memory. Dalí made it in 1931 at 27, and since 1934 it's hung in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, where it does something to first-time visitors that hardly any other famous painting manages. It disappoints them. Not the painting, its size. People come round the corner braced for a wall, and what they get is 24 centimetres by 33. Half of it, by the way, is real. Those gold cliffs on the horizon are the actual cliffs at Cap de Creus, the cape on the Catalan coast where Dalí spent every childhood summer, painted the way anyone paints a landscape, by looking at it. The dreaming is all in the foreground. 4 watches, one drooping off a dead olive branch, one sliding off a stone block with a fly on its face, one draped over the pale thing in the middle, which is going to take some explaining, and a 4th, the only one still hard, lying face down with its back covered in ants. Hang on to the ants. They're not decoration. To understand why a 27-year-old paints time as soft and crawling with insects, you have to go back to before he was born. August 1903, in Figueres. A little boy dies of gastroenteritis at 22 months old. His name is Salvador Dalí. 9 months later, his parents have another son and give him the same name. And when the second Salvador is 5, they take him to the grave and tell him he is his brother, come back to them. He believed it. He called the dead boy a first draft of himself, a version made too well to survive. Decay wasn't something Dalí discovered as an artist, it was issued to him with the name. The ants, he explains himself. As a boy, he adopted an injured bat, kept it behind the wash house, and came out one morning to find it still alive and being eaten by ants. What he says he did next, out of pity, was pick it up and bite it nearly in half. Now, Dalí lied the way other people clear their throats, so whether there was ever a bat is anyone's guess. But the ants aren't in question. They crawl through 60 years of his work, over hands, over faces, over that orange watch. And they always mean one thing: rot. The body as a temporary arrangement. Then 1929 happens and everything goes off at once. He co-writes Un Chien Andalou with Luis Buñuel, the one with the razor and the eyeball, and also, not by accident, the one where ants come pouring out of a hole in a man's palm. It makes him the scandal of Paris overnight. That August, a group of surrealists come to the coast to see him, and one brings his wife. Russian, 10 years older than Dalí. Everybody called her Gala. She looked at a twitchy 25-year-old and decided he was a genius. Her husband went back to Paris at the end of the summer. She didn't. Dalí's father threw him out of the family that December. Disinherited, told never to set foot in Cadaqués again. His response was pure Dalí. He shaved his head and had himself photographed, a funeral for one. He came back anyway, not to his father's town, but the next bay along, Port Ligat, where he and Gala moved into a fisherman's hut you could barely turn around in. That hut is where this painting happened, and the circumstances are so daft people still refuse to believe them. One evening in 1931, they had friends over for dinner, and the meal finished with a very strong camembert. Everyone was going on to the cinema afterwards, but Dalí had a headache, so he cried off and stayed behind. He didn't sleep. He sat at the table after they'd gone, thinking about the cheese. Not eating it, thinking about it. Meditating is the word he uses on the problem of the super soft. Eventually, he got up to switch the studio light off and glanced at the canvas out of habit. He'd started it weeks earlier and stalled. The rocks of the coast under a dying light, One bare olive tree, nothing else. A stage set waiting for a play that never turned up. His hand was on the switch when he saw it. Not an idea for it. The whole thing, finished. 2 soft watches, one hanging off the olive branch like a wet tea towel. He put the light back on. The headache was getting worse. He painted anyway, and when Gala came in from the cinema 2 hours later, the persistence of memory existed. Within months, a dealer had bought it for $250, and a tiny canvas from a Catalan fishing village was hanging in New York. And then, everybody decided what it meant. This was the age of Einstein. Relativity was in the newspapers. Time and space were officially bendable. And here was a painting of clocks gone soft. Scholars read the watches as the collapse of fixed cosmic time, and that reading stuck so hard, it's still on gallery walls today. Decades later, the scientist Ilya Prigogine wrote and asked him straight out. Dalí wrote back that the soft watches had nothing whatsoever to do with relativity. They came from a camembert going soft in the sun. His own description goes further, and I can't improve on it. The tender, extravagant, and solitary paranoiac critical camembert of time and space. People keep waiting for a punchline. There isn't one. The clocks that ate the 20th century started out as leftover cheese, stared at by a man with a headache. But there's a phrase buried in that sentence. Paranoiac critical. And that part was never a joke. That was his method, trained for years, seeing one image hidden inside another, the way you find a face in a cloud and then can't stop finding it, then painting the hallucination with the precision of a photograph. Which finally gets us to the thing in the middle of the picture. It has a nose. It has a closed eye with long, fine eyelashes. Something soft spills out of the front like a tongue. Look long enough, and it resolves into a human face in profile, lying on its side with all the bone taken out. Asleep, more or less. And it isn't a stranger's face. Dalí had painted the same profile 2 years earlier, taken by his own account from a rock on Cap de Creuse, shaped like a man's head resting on its nose. So the face is his. The most famous painting about time ever made is a self-portrait. The painter asleep in the landscape of his own childhood, one of his watches melting over him like a blanket, the ants of his nightmares a few centimeters from his ear. Time isn't the subject of this picture. Time is the weather in it. The subject is the man asleep. He lived another 58 years and never got out from under it. In the early 50s, he painted the whole scene again, coming apart, the watches dissolving into particles, and called it the disintegration of the persistence of memory. He'd take his own dream to pieces, atom by atom. But never the title. Which brings us back to the hut, because that night in 1931 has one scene left in it. When Gala got home, with the paint still wet, Dalí sat her down in front of the canvas and made her close her eyes. He counted to 3 and told her to open them. And he didn't ask whether she liked it. He asked the only question that ever really mattered to him. In 3 years' time, would she have forgotten this image? She looked at it for a while. The melting watches, the ants, the sleeping face of the man she'd left her marriage for. And she said, "No one can forget it once he has seen it." Now read the title again. The Persistence of Memory. It was never about clocks. The clocks are time failing, sagging, giving up in the heat. The only thing in that picture that doesn't fail is the title. And the title is her answer, hanging on a museum wall, still doing its job 95 years later. All the way into your head, where this image was already sitting before you clicked on this video. A tiny canvas, painted by a man with a headache who'd stared too long at a cheese. Gala was right. No one forgets it once they've seen it.